September 22nd, 1992. Do you remember when airplane seats were bigger and flights served real meals on china plates? Audrey Hepburn sat in economy class on a UN charter flight to Somalia holding a photograph of a child. The photo showed a little girl, maybe 4 years old, with enormous eyes and skeletal limbs. The kind of image that made you look away because looking hurt too much. But Audrey didn't look away. She never looked away. The woman next to her, a UNICEF photographer who'd worked with Audrey for years, leaned over. "Audrey, you don't have to do this. The doctor said you need rest. You just finished chemotherapy last month." Audrey was 63 years old. She'd been battling colon cancer, had lost weight she couldn't afford to lose. But when UNICEF called about the famine in Somalia, she'd said yes without hesitation. "Krista, do you know what this child's name is?" Audrey held up the photograph. "No, they don't always get names in the refugee camps." "Exactly. She doesn't even have a name. But she has eyes. And those eyes are asking for help. How can I say no to those eyes?" But nobody on that plane knew what Audrey had lived through as a child and why she couldn't refuse point 1944. Arnhem, Netherlands. Do you remember World War II? Not from movies, from real life? From ration cards and air raid sirens and hunger that gnawed at your stomach until you forgot what fullness felt like. Audrey Hepburn was 15 years old. Her real name was Audrey Kathleen Rustin. She lived with her mother in Nazi-occupied Holland. Her father had abandoned them years earlier. Her half-brothers were in concentration camps. And food was disappearing. The Dutch called it the Hunger Winter. The Hunger Winter of 1944 to 1945. Nazi forces cut off food supplies to punish the Dutch resistance. 20,000 people starved to death, including children, including families who'd done nothing wrong except be born in the wrong place at the wrong time. Audrey ate tulip bulbs to survive. Remember tulips? Those beautiful Dutch flowers? She boiled the bulbs and ate them because there was nothing else. She drank water mixed with flour. She grew thin and weak, developed anemia and edema and respiratory problems that would affect her for life. One day, she watched a little boy die in the street, just collapse from hunger. His mother screamed and screamed. Nobody could help. There was no food, no medicine, no hope. Audrey never forgot his eyes. The way they looked at nothing. The way hunger erased everything. Personality, dreams, future, until only those empty eyes remained. And that memory, that horror, would drive everything she did for the next 48 years. 1953. Hollywood, California. Remember when movie stars were elegant? When they wore gloves and hats and spoke in refined accents. Audrey Hepburn had become exactly that kind of star. Roman Holiday had just been released, her first major film. She played a princess who escapes royal duties for one day of freedom in Rome. The movie was charming, romantic, perfect. Audrey won the Academy Award for Best Actress. Suddenly, the girl who'd eaten tulip bulbs was wearing Da Vinci gowns. The girl who'd hidden from Nazi soldiers was photographed with presidents and princes. The girl who'd watched children starve was now the most beautiful woman in the world. You remember that famous breakfast at Tiffany's image? Audrey in the black dress with pearls, cigarette holder, upswept hair? That became the definition of elegance, of grace, of Hollywood glamour. But Audrey never forgot the Hunger Winter. Never forgot the little boy in the street. Never let glamour erase memory. In interviews, she'd say things like, "I was lucky. I survived. So many didn't." Or, "Everything I have, the career, the clothes, the lifestyle, feels borrowed, like it could disappear any moment." People thought she was being modest, self-deprecating. That famous Audrey Hepburn humility. But it wasn't modesty. It was survivor guilt. And in 1988, she found a way to pay her debt to those who didn't survive. March 9th, 1988. UNICEF headquarters, New York. Do you remember when celebrities doing charity work was rare? When fame was mostly about fame, not causes. Audrey had been approached by UNICEF multiple times over the years. Always declined. Said she wasn't qualified. Wasn't educated enough. Wasn't the right person. But in 1988, they asked again. This time differently. "Audrey, we don't need an expert. We need someone who understands hunger, who's lived it, who can look into the eyes of a starving child and see themselves." Audrey was 58 years old, had been semi-retired from acting for years, lived quietly in Switzerland with her partner Robert Wolders, spent time in her garden, visited her sons, enjoyed the peace she never had as a child. But that request, that specific request, someone who understands hunger, she said yes. Her first mission was to Ethiopia. Remember the 1984 to 1985 famine? The images that shocked the world. Audrey arrived in 1988, after the worst had passed, but while children were still dying, she walked into a feeding center. Dozens of children, skeletal, silent, those enormous eyes and tiny faces. And Audrey saw herself at 15, saw the little boy who died in the Arnhem Street, saw every child who didn't survive the hunger winter. She sat down with a little girl, maybe 5 years old, couldn't walk, could barely lift her head. Audrey held her, rocked her, whispered in Dutch and English and French, languages a child didn't understand, but the tone transcended language. "You're going to be okay," Audrey whispered. "I promise. You're going to eat and grow strong and have a future. I promise." The photographers captured that moment. Audrey Hepburn, movie star, holding a dying child like she was the most precious thing in the world. But here's what the cameras didn't show. Audrey went to her hotel room that night and couldn't stop crying. Robert Wolders found her on the bathroom floor. She wasn't just crying. She was sobbing, shaking, reliving every moment of the hunger winter. "Audrey, we can go home. You don't have to do this. I do have to do this. Don't you see? That little girl. She's me. I'm her. The only difference is I was born in a country that got liberated. She was born in a country the world forgot. That's not fair. That's not right. You can't save them all. I know, but I can try. I have to try. Because 50 years ago, someone from the UN brought food to Holland. Someone I never met. Someone whose name I don't know. That person saved my life. Now it's my turn. And for the next 4 years, Audrey traveled to the hardest places on earth: Bangladesh, Sudan, Guatemala, El Salvador, Vietnam, Turkey, Venezuela, Honduras, Ecuador. Remember when travel meant adventure, not humanitarian crisis? Audrey went to places tourists never went. Places where children died from preventable diseases. Where clean water was a luxury. Where food was a dream. She was 60, 61, 62 years old. An age when most Hollywood stars were enjoying retirement. But Audrey was walking through refugee camps in 100-degree heat, holding babies with cholera, distributing vaccines, testifying before Congress about foreign aid. Her sons begged her to slow down. "Mom, you're exhausted. You're losing weight. Please rest. I'll rest when there are no more hungry children. Until then, I work. Do you understand what that means?" She wasn't going to rest, because there would always be hungry children. She committed herself to an impossible mission that could only end one way. And then came Somalia, the worst famine in 50 years. And Audrey's last mission, September 1992. Mogadishu, Somalia. Remember when news covered famines? When networks showed the reality of starvation without censoring the horror? Somalia was hell on earth. Civil war, anarchy, warlords stealing food aid, and children, thousands of children, dying every day. Audrey arrived weak, still recovering from surgery. Her doctors had said, "No travel for 6 months. Your immune system can't handle it." She'd lied to them, said she was in Switzerland to rest. Instead, she flew to Somalia. The UNICEF team tried to protect her. "Audrey, stay in the safe zones. Don't go to the worst camps." "No, I want to see the worst. I want to tell people the truth. If I only see the success stories, how can I advocate for the ones who need help most?" So they took her to a camp outside Mogadishu. Thousands of people, skeletal, dying. The smell of death and desperation. The sound of mothers crying over children they couldn't save. Audrey walked through that camp for hours, held every child who reached for her, spoke to every mother, looked into every pair of eyes, a photographer later said. "I watched Audrey that day. She never flinched, never turned away, never showed disgust or fear. Just love. Pure, unconditional love for people she'd never met and would never see again." But when she got back to the vehicle, she collapsed. Fever, exhaustion, pain. "I'm fine," she insisted. "Just tired. Let me rest a minute." She wasn't fine. The cancer was back, growing, killing her. But she had 3 more camps to visit. So she got up and kept going. And here's the moment that broke her heart and would haunt her final months, the last camp. A little girl, maybe 4 years old, looked exactly like the photograph Audrey had been carrying. Those enormous eyes, skeletal limbs, silent because cry requires energy and she had none. Audrey sat with her, held her. The little girl was too weak to respond, just stared. Those eyes asking the question every starving child asks. "Why?" "I'm going to get you help," Audrey whispered. "I promise. Food, medicine, a future. I promise." The little girl died 3 hours later. Audrey wasn't there. She'd moved to the next camp. When they told her, she closed her eyes and nodded. No tears. No words. Just silence. That night in her notes, she kept notes from every mission she wrote. Her name was Asha. It means life in Somali. She was 4 years old. I promised her a future. I lied. That guilt, that unbearable, crushing guilt, went home with her to Switzerland, October to December 1992. Audrey was dying and knew it. The cancer had spread. Doctors said, maybe months, maybe weeks. They could try more chemotherapy, but it would only buy time and cost her what little quality of life remained. I don't want treatment, she told Robert. I want to use what time I have to advocate, to tell people about Somalia, about all the Ashas who are dying while we live in comfort. So she did interviews, testified before the UN, spoke to anyone who would listen. Her last major interview was in December, 2 weeks before Christmas. She looked frail, thin, tired, but her voice was strong. I've seen things that would break your heart. Children dying from diseases we cured decades ago. Mothers watching their babies starve. It's obscene. It's unacceptable. And it's preventable. We have the food. We have the medicine. We have the resources. What we lack is a will to care about people who can't vote for us or buy our products. The interviewer asked, what drives you to keep doing this work? Guilt, she said honestly. I survived the hunger winter. Millions didn't. I became rich and famous. They became forgotten statistics. I owe them this. I owe it to every child who didn't get lucky. 3 weeks later, she was gone. January 20th, 1993. Audrey Hepburn died at home in Switzerland. She was 63 years old, surrounded by her sons and Robert. Peaceful. Ready her last words? According to Robert, I had a wonderful life. I did what I could. I hope it mattered. Did it matter? Judge for yourself. After her death, UNICEF donations surged. Her Somalia advocacy led to increased humanitarian aid. The Audrey Hepburn Spirit of Compassion Award was created for humanitarians. Medical teams named programs after her. Orphanages displayed her photo. But more importantly, every person who saw her hold those children and thought, I can help too, became part of her legacy. Every donation made in her memory. Every volunteer inspired by her example. Every child who lived because she'd shown a spotlight on their suffering. Audrey didn't save all the children. She couldn't. Asha died. Thousands more died. Millions more are hungry today, but she tried. She spent her final years, when she could have been resting, enjoying grandchildren, living peacefully in the hardest places on earth, holding dying children and begging the world to care. And here's why the story matters more than you think. You remember Audrey Hepburn? If you're old enough, you remember her as Holly Golightly, the elegant woman in the black dress at Tiffany's. The princess in Roman Holiday, the beautiful, refined, perfect Hollywood icon. But that wasn't who she really was. She was a girl who ate tulip bulbs. The teenager who watched children die from hunger. The woman who never forgot what it felt like to be helpless and starving. She could have stayed in Switzerland. Could have kept her Hollywood memories and elegant image intact. Could have let UNICEF find someone else. But she didn't. Because she made a promise to that little boy who died in the street in 1944. A promise that she'd never look away. Never forget. Never stop trying to help. The children she couldn't save outnumber the ones she could. That's the brutal truth. But the ones she could save, the feeding centers funded because of her advocacy, the vaccines distributed because she testified to Congress, the orphanages built with donations she inspired, those children lived, and their children are alive today, and their grandchildren will be born because Audrey Hepburn chose guilt over comfort, chose action over elegance, chose dying on her feet, working rather than peacefully in retirement. That's the echo. Can you hear it? It sounds like a little girl named Asha asking why. Like Audrey whispering promises she couldn't keep. Like Robert saying, I had a wonderful life. I did what I could. It sounds like every humanitarian who's traveled to hard places. Every celebrity who's used their platform for causes instead of vanity. Every person who's looked at suffering and thought, I have to help, instead of, that's not my problem. Audrey Hepburn spent 40 years being beautiful. She spent 4 years being necessary. Guess which legacy matters more? The little black dress hangs in a museum. The Oscar sits on a shelf. But somewhere in Africa, a child who lived because of Audrey's advocacy is now raising children of their own. That's not Hollywood. That's not glamour. That's immortality to you remember Audrey Hepburn? Remember her for both. The beauty and the bravery. The elegance and the empathy. The actress and the activist. But most of all, remember that she could have done nothing. She'd earned rest. She'd survived hell as a child and triumph as an adult. Nobody would have blamed her for enjoying her final years in peace. She chose otherwise. And children live because of that choice. The echo never ends.